Northwest Indian War, Battle of Wabash, St.Clair defeat, 1791. All parts. Oh, this is right at the time of the French Revolution. Okay. Okay. Interesting.
1787.
Oh, it's not the same narrator as usual.
11 years have passed since the United States of America declared their independence from the British Empire.
America.
But for the Americans, building a new nation is proving a formidable challenge. The infant republic is mired in debt, as well as political and economic turmoil.
They had debt to France that they didn't want to pay. I learned that recently at the time, yeah.
Veterans of the War of Independence, unpaid and desperate, mount an insurrection, Shays Rebellion.
Shays Rebellion.
The new federal government survives this crisis, but it is hamstrung by the Articles of Confederation, the country's first constitution, which severely limits its power. So, later that year, lawmakers gather in Philadelphia to draft a new U.S. Constitution with much stronger powers for the executive. Meanwhile, in America's newly proclaimed Northwest Territory, another crisis is brewing. In theory, this vast region has been ceded to the United States by the British following the Revolutionary War. It stretches from the Appalachian Mountains in the east to the Mississippi River in the west, and from the Great Lakes in the north to the Ohio River in the south.
Not Ohio.
It was 300,000 square miles of untamed land, abundant in natural resources, and as far as the U.S. is concerned, ripe for expansion.
Fair enough.
The federal government plans to sell the land to settlers to pay off its enormous debts from the Revolutionary War. About $40 million in all.
65 billion today. I was going to say, like, today money would be insane.
Thousands of settlers are eager to travel west, to build new farms and towns, and start new lives on the frontier. But there is a problem.
Indians, well, Native American, my bad.
Not only have thousands of settlers already crossed...
I think I said it before, but in French we don't have, like, the distinction, I think. In French, you know, like, Indian isn't really, like, a bad word per se. It's literally, like, a word made to describe, you know, like, native of a land being colonized or something. So, I don't think... I mean, except if I'm, like, out of date on lingo, but I don't think we have something for Native American. Yeah, like, it's too legendary. I know what you mean, Nobik. I know what you mean. It's kind of too legendary at this point. Yeah. So Native American.
Crossed illegally into the Northwest Territory, the Native American tribes who already live there will bitterly resist any invasion of their ancestral homeland.
Yeah.
The United States is stumbling into a war of conquest, a war for which it's badly unprepared, against an enemy it woefully underestimates.
I think the only thing I really know about this might be, I don't know if it's like even an historical movie, but I remember a movie, The Last of the Mohican. Was the Mohican one of the groups at that time, or is it something before even this? I don't know. And I think it was a movie about this period. Maybe. We see your intentions. It is clear that your design is to take our country from us. Keke Wepelesi, Shoni Shif, 1784.
European settlers had been encroaching into Native American land for nearly 200 years. The violence was endemic. Some eastern tribes had been virtually annihilated.
Yeah.
And the War of Independence, in which most Native Americans backed the British, saw intense fighting across the frontier. Warriors from tribes such as the Miami, Shawnee, and Lenape, also known as the Delaware, targeted U.S. settlements along the Ohio.
Is that what gave name to some of the cities like Miami, Delaware? I think Delaware maybe is that not a state or something? Miami is the city, right? So the name came from Native American tribes.
The river, hoping
That's
to drive
interesting.
away the intruders. Local militia companies, part-time settler soldiers, responded with reprisal raids. One notorious incident occurred in 1782 at Hutton. Here, Pennsylvania militiamen massacred 96 unresisting Lenape Christian converts, men, women, and children. Native American raids could be equally brutal.
Despite the fact that they were converts to Christian, which is probably what they would want.
There were hundreds of victims on both sides, a cycle of violence that continued year after year.
Yeah.
But now, the U.S. government is determined to impose orderly and safe settlement of the region. And crucially, to begin selling the land to settlers, corporations, and speculators. Since independence, the U.S. government has imposed a series of one-sided treaties on the Native Americans, claiming their land by right of conquest, and using bribes, threats, and violence to get its way. Congress now goes a step further, formally establishing the Northwest Territory with clear rules for its surveying and settlement. Under the leadership of Mohawk Chief Joseph Brant, the tribes have organized themselves into the Northwestern Confederacy. They reject and denounce the U.S. treaties and the new plans for settlement. These tribes are determined to hold the line of U.S. settlement at the Ohio River and will fight to do so.
But obviously, I imagine they had no chance, right? And like, Native American were mostly tribes. There was no, like, it wasn't a massive country united with armies or anything. It's mostly tribes. So, you know, I guess there was never any chance, yeah. And obviously the US needed money, so there was also never any chance on their side to be like, yeah, we'll just leave you alone because it's kind of fucked up to take your land. But frankly, it's every country at a time. I mean, even France was doing this around this time. Like, you know, the colonies like Haiti and stuff like that, you know. Every country is like, yeah, we need the money, so let's go take it from other people.
With violence flaring across the Northwest Territory, it will fall to America's first president, George Washington, to find a solution to the crisis.
Solution. The government of the United States are determined that the administration of Indians' affairs shall be directed entirely by the great principle of justice and humanity. Are you sure about that?
George Washington, inaugurated as the first president of the United States in April 1789, faces many daunting challenges in his first term. High among them, the national debt and the factions forming within his own cabinet. Now, the escalating crisis in the Northwest Territory joins the list.
Yeah.
Washington declares his wish to deal with Native Americans honorably and fairly. Yet, at the same time, he will allow nothing to stand in the way of the Republic's security or expansion. He's also being lobbied by a powerful association of land speculators, including his own Secretary of War, Henry Knox, who are demanding action. Their concern is that the violence in the Northwest Territory will harm their investments.
Awesome.
In 1789, a final attempt is made to persuade the tribes to sign away their land. But negotiations at Fort Harmar are boycotted by the most powerful tribes.
Yeah.
And so, in the summer of 1790, Washington authorizes military.
I don't know what it was, like, I wonder if the tribe actually thought, you know, they could win, or it's more like a question of honor, you know? Like, rather than sell our land, we'll just fight to the last or something. I wonder what it was that made them not accept.
Military action. He orders the U.S. Army to launch a punitive expedition. a show of power to deter further attacks by Native Americans on U.S. settlers. It is an order for an invasion.
Yeah.
Command of the expedition falls to Brevet Brigadier General Josiah Harmar, the nation's most senior Army officer. He is a distinguished Revolutionary War veteran who'd served with Washington at Valley Forge. But Harmar is also rumored to be a hard
American
drinker
Revolution.
and insists his troops follow the European model of war, relying on drill and close order formations which are completely unsuited to frontier.
I was gonna say that works against the enemy that does the same, not against Native American who's not going to stand in lines.
Warfare. The forces at his disposal are extremely limited. The victorious Continental Army, which had defeated the British, has long been disbanded. In its place, Congress has authorized the formation of a single infantry regiment, around 700 men.
Okay, that's not a lot, huh?
So the bulk of Harmar's expedition will be made up of militiamen from Kentucky and Pennsylvania. Few of these were experienced frontiersmen. Rather, they're often those who lack the wits or wealth to avoid militia service. Many are old or very young, with little training and no experience of the woods. A stark contrast to the enemy they'd soon come up against.
Right. But I'm guessing again, like, yeah, okay, this looks way better on paper, but the problem is that America, you know, if they start losing, they're gonna have like again like dozens of thousands of troops more being sent to make sure it works. Huh? While the Native American have very, very limited amount of people, I assume, in comparison. But it's still pretty insane that they only sent 700 men used to fighting against like the British lines. That seems pretty insane, yeah. It is probable the Indians will fight us in earnest. The greater part of our force will consist of militia. Therefore, there is some reason to apprehend trouble. Major John Willis, 1st American Regiment, 1754 to 90.
General Harmar plans to march his force north from Fort Washington, along 150 miles of mostly forest trails, to destroy the Miami settlement at Keekayonke. He'll be supported by another mixed force of regulars and militia. 330 men commanded by Major Hamtramck, marching from Vincennes.
It's still like, you know, again, having watched so many epic history videos, especially about Napoleon, yeah, it's so weird to hear, you know, 700 men, 300 men, compared to like the 60,000, 100,000 armies of, you know, the usual videos, right? That's such a different scale.
On October 7th, 1790, Harmar sets out on the United States' first major military operation since independence. After an 8-day march, his force reaches the Miami village at Keekayonke, only to find it torched and abandoned.
Smart.
The Miami have destroyed their own homes and apparently vanished. But Harmar's troops are being watched.
Let's go.
Hundreds of warriors of the Northwest Confederacy have assembled to resist the U.S. attack. They are led by Miami War Chief Mishkinaqua, aka Little Turtle, Shawnee Chief Wayapir Senwa, aka Blue Jacket, and Bakangahelas of the Lenape. They and their warriors are determined, well armed, and know every inch of their homeland.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, 150 miles southwest, Hamtramck's militia have mutinied, refusing to advance further into the forests, and he has to turn back.
Good.
General Harmar is on his own. His force spends 4 days burning villages in the area and destroying any food stores they can discover.
Alright.
Then, on October 19th, one of his companies is lured into an ambush. Attacked by more than 100 warriors, 150 militiamen turn and run.
Damn.
A single platoon of regulars stand their ground and are massacred.
Yeah, bravery wasn't great at that moment.
Around 30 U.S.
And
soldiers
look
are
at the art.
killed, with another 40 militia missing. 2 days later, Harmar decides his mission is complete and sets off for Fort Washington.
But you lost. What's complete?
Hours later, his scouts report that villagers are returning to Kikayange.
Damn.
Hoping to finally engage and defeat the enemy, Harmar's troops make a dawn attack. They expect to have the element of surprise.
Surprise, I mean, you're fighting natives. Like, of course, like, they're shadowing your army and they know exactly where you are. While you are walking an army in, like, lines and everything.
But once more, they stumble into an ambush.
Awesome.
In confused fighting, more than 100 U.S. soldiers are killed, scalped, and left where they've fallen.
Ah, the scalping thing is so fucked up.
Today, many mistakenly believe scalping to have been an exclusively Native American practice.
I'm sure they did
In
it back.
fact, for more than a century, it had been widely taken up by European settlers,
Really?
often with encouragement from colonial authorities who paid bounties for native scalps as proof of death.
Really?
What had begun as a ritual practice among certain tribes had become far more widespread and was now routinely carried out by both sides in the frontier wars.
Well, that's fucked up.
Harmar returns with his shaken force to Fort Washington, where he claims success.
Of course.
He has, after all, destroyed 5 Miami.
But you lost 2 battles. I mean, you destroyed the village, but the people are still there. Like, you lost the battles. How can you claim success? I mean, dude.
Villages and considerable grain stores. It is a heavy blow to the tribes and will mean great hardship that
I guess that's
winter.
fair. That's fair.
But others saw it differently. The expedition has gone down in history as Harmar's defeat, and at the time it was the largest U.S. defeat by Native Americans. Harmar is later exonerated by a court-martial, but his reputation never recovers.
Good. I'm entering to say he win when he lose. Our prospects are much changed. Instead of peace and friendship with our Indian neighbors, the horrid savage war stares us in the face. The Indians, instead of being humbled, appears determined of a general war. Rufus Putnam, Ohio Company, to Secretary of War Henry Knox. Interesting. Instead of peace and friendship with our Indian neighbors. I mean, like, maybe, you know, he didn't know, but he's a Secretary of War, but like, you know, are you gonna gain friendship when you're just trying to, like, get them out of their land? I don't know. Like, what a surprise that they're not friendly with you.
That winter, both sides continue their raids across the Northwest Territory. In January 1791, at Big Bottom, Lenape and
Big
Wyandotte
Bottom.
warriors kill 12 settlers, including 2 children.
Damn.
Such attacks spread
Always the
alarm
innocents.
across the territory and threaten the entire U.S. project of settlement, upon which powerful interests now depend.
Money.
Settlers fear to travel west. Land speculators are up in arms. President Washington now turns to the governor of the Northwest Territory, 54-year-old Scottish-born Arthur St.Clair.
Scott.
St.Clair had plenty of military experience. Like Washington, he'd served as a British officer in the French and Indian War. And in '59, he'd stormed the heights of Quebec with General Wolfe.
Okay.
During the Revolutionary War, he joined the Continental Army and was with Washington when he crossed the Delaware. But his record was tarnished in 1777 by his decision to abandon Fort Ticonderoga to the British without a fight. St.Clair now suffers from severe gout. But this does not dissuade President Washington from giving him the rank of Major General.
What is gout? Let's look it up. Gout? No, goût in French, goût is taste. Is it a disease? Gout meaning? No, pain. Gout meaning? This is in which defective metabolism of uric acid cause arthritis, especially in the smaller bone of the feet, disposition of chalk stone, and episode of acute pain. Okay, fair enough. So it's not doing very well.
And orders to launch a second expedition against the Northwestern Confederacy. This time, the tribes must be taught a severe and unequivocal lesson. Comply with U.S. demands or face annihilation. Congress authorizes the raising of a second regular infantry regiment for the expedition. However, the prospect of frontier service is so unenticing that it proves impossible to recruit enough men to fill its ranks. St.Clair's force will number not the 3,000 or 4,000 men originally envisaged, but around 2,000.
I guess it's still more.
These include 500 regular infantry from the 1st and 2nd Regiment, 100 mounted dragoons, and 10 3-pounder and 6-pounder cannon.
The cannon seems almost kind of useless in this situation. Like, the Native American aren't like in lines. They don't have like defensivers work or something. Like, they're just gonna move around, hide behind the trees and stuff like that. So I feel like that's kind of useless.
The 1st and 2nd Levy regiments provide 800 short service volunteers, though almost all of these are raw recruits. Of the militia, Captain Faulkner's Pennsylvanian riflemen are experienced frontier fighters, but there's only 60 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
While most of the 400 Kentucky militia are completely inexperienced. The Northwestern Confederacy knows that their victory over General Harmar will not go unanswered, and they too prepare for another U.S. attack.
Good.
For the tribes, it is a daunting prospect.
Yeah.
A battle for survival, in which they know their families, villages, and livelihoods will be targeted indiscriminately. But the common threat brings together warriors from a dozen tribes, about 1,400 in all, making it one of the largest Native American armies ever assembled on the frontier.
Because I'm guessing that might be like one of the max they can gather, right? But even though there isn't a lot of volunteer, I guess the US can just keep raising and raising and raising, right? So that's the problem.
Miami War Chief Little Turtle will again play a leading role, alongside Blue Jacket and Bakongahelas.
Okay.
War chiefs organize the warriors according to tribe and language.
And
they are well armed. Many carry Brown Bess muskets, supplied by the British at Fort Detroit. For close combat, they carry clubs, tomahawks, and knives.
The tomahawks.
Many warriors will paint their face before battle.
It looks sick.
A ritual preparation for combat that also serves to terrify the enemy.
Yeah. If you are overall underpowered compared to the enemy conventional army, only logical way to defeat a strong army is using underhand tactic, fight unseen, hit and run. Yeah, fair enough. Should you foolishly persist in your warfare, the sons of war will let loose against you, and the hatchet will never be buried until your country is desolated and your people humbled to the dust. That sounds insane. Brigadier General Charles Scott, Kentucky Militia to Native Chief. That is insane. That sounds insane. Humbled to the dust.
Summer 1791. St.Clair's orders are to leave Fort Washington no later than July 10th and return to the Miami villages at Kikayange. President Washington particularly warns him to be alert for ambushes on the march.
But he ignores it or something? No.
Once St.Clair has eliminated all resistance at Kikayange, he is to build a fort and garrison it with 1,200 men.
Okay.
This stronghold will allow the U.S. to assert its control of the area and counter British influence from Fort Detroit. The British are supposed to have evacuated this outpost following the Revolutionary War.
I was gonna say, like, so the British are still around at this time. I thought the war was over.
But they have not done so, and now use it as a base to encourage and support Native American resistance to the U.S.
I see.
St.Clair's expedition, however, is in trouble.
The greatest colonizer of all time being like, you know, yeah, we may be the greatest colonizer, but I guess we have the same enemies, so we're nice to you for now, you know? I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, like, you know, when the British used to rule the Americas, maybe they were nice to the Native American. I'm sure that's probably true. I'm sure they were very nice. Usually the British are very nice to the place they colonized, right? I'm sure. But man, that's ironic, that now they're trying to get the Native American to help them.
Before it can even set off, the U.S. Army's supply system relies on private contractors, most of whom are brazenly corrupt. They have pocketed most of the funds intended for the expedition.
Americans, the British that called themselves as... Yeah, you're right. Created a certain state which became USA. You're right. Fair enough.
St.Clair is seriously short of food, ammunition, and equipment. Precious weeks are lost as he urgently seeks to secure proper supplies for his troops, while rush training the many raw recruits in his force. Meanwhile, 2 preparatory attacks are launched against the Native Americans. In May, Brigadier General Charles Scott leads a mounted militia raid that burns several villages and takes 41 hostages to be used in future negotiations. 2 months later, Lieutenant Wilkinson leads a second raid that burns more villages and crops. They take 34 hostages, including the daughter of Miami War Chief Little Turtle.
Damn.
The raids are supposed to distract the tribes, to keep them off balance ahead of the main attack. All they really achieve is to enrage and unite the Northwestern Confederacy like never before. And when St.Clair's army is finally ready to march north that autumn, they will be ready and waiting.
And I really love a good game about this part of history. I think I saw one on Steam once, something called My Tribe or something like that. I don't know if it was exactly about this period, but it seems to be about playing as a Native American. I don't know in what exact period, but yeah, it would be pretty interesting. In some way, you know, we have games around that period, like Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, but they're more on the gunslinger, you know, side of things, right?
That summer, St.Clair's force assembles near Fort Washington. Today, the city of Cincinnati, Ohio. Troops then advance 18 miles to the banks of the Great Miami River and construct a supply base named Fort Hamilton. General St.Clair, however, has to travel 70 miles to Lexington to find his militia reinforcements. In the end, he gets just 400 men, less than half what he'd been promised.
Okay.
In his absence, his second in command, Major General Richard Butler, is in charge. 48 years old, Irish-born, Butler had been a distinguished regimental commander in the Revolutionary War, frequently praised by Washington himself.
Okay.
He also has considerable experience of negotiating with the Northwestern Confederacy and knows several of the chiefs personally.
That's good.
Following
then,
St.Clair's orders, as soon as Fort Hamilton is complete, Butler leads the army north. It's October 4th, a late start for what had been planned as a summer campaign.
Right.
The nights are already colder and days shorter. The army's advance through the forest is painfully slow. Narrow trails have to be widened for wagons and artillery. But there is a dire shortage of axes and saws. For the first 5 days of the advance, the army averages just 4.5 miles a day.
Wow, that's not much.
When St.Clair rejoins the army, he is infuriated by the snail-like progress.
Rise before his sting, I guess.
But at every stage, he is hampered by a lack of equipment and supplies. He is particularly concerned about the shortage of flour for baking bread. On October 12th, heavy rain is followed by the first frost. And in freezing mud, St.Clair's army grinds to a halt. Conditions for the troops are miserable.
They're gonna
It
desert
rains
or
constantly.
break in the face of the enemies.
Rations have been halved, and morale is at rock bottom.
Yeah.
Soldiers begin to desert in growing...
Like, at this point, he should already, like, stop, right? I know it's been ordered to do this, but this is clearly heading into another disaster. Like retreat, reinforce, get the supply you need, and then do it again or something. But I guess as we see so many times in history, you know, like, he'd rather try to do things as they are rather than do the smart thing. Clearly heading into disaster.
numbers. Incredibly, the 6-month contracts of many levied troops now start to expire mid-campaign.
Wow.
And as soon as their time is up, many, understandably, choose to go home.
Smart.
9 days into the advance, 40 miles north of Fort Hamilton, St.Clair orders the construction of another supply base.
Yes, I'm surprised they didn't let
This
them go
one
and
will
not
be
force them or
named
something.
Fort Jefferson. It takes 2 weeks to build. St.Clair's decision to secure his supply route in this fashion is militarily prudent, but it's costing a lot of time. And his troops remain cold, wet, and hungry.
Yeah.
At Fort Jefferson, 3 soldiers are caught trying to desert. St.Clair decides to make an example of them, and they are hanged.
Here is the start of the madness.
The army is now down to 1,500 men. Already a third of its strength has been lost to sickness.
I guess we're gonna reach even numbers with the Native Americans before the fight even starts, so... Alright.
Desertion, or left behind to garrison forts. Things are so bad, St.Clair considers turning back.
Yeah.
He himself is suffering agonizing attacks of gout that leave him unable to ride a horse. But he decides to continue the advance. A few days later, it begins to snow, and the army, having again run out of flour, halts once more.
At this point, just stop until you get what you need. It seems somewhat extraordinary that the tribes should have allowed us to be here so long, in the interior of their country, and never looked at us, General St.Clair to Henry Knox. They probably looked at you. They're just waiting.
US troops
Like, they're just waiting for you to keep whittling down, I mean. Like, so far, without a battle, you've already lost, you know, like a good portion of your men, so... They're probably like, yeah, we don't need to do anything, like, let them slowly destroy themselves, and when it comes to the actual battle, you know, the later the better for the tribes, I guess.
await supplies. Little Turtle and fellow commanders of the Northwestern Confederacy have been formulating their response to the expedition. They have observed the slow progress of St.Clair's force and already picked off a few stragglers and deserters. They know their forces are now evenly matched in numbers. So rather than retreat, as they'd done the previous year, the chiefs decide to challenge the US Army head-on in battle.
Frankly, this might not be such a bad idea, yeah? Like, not only are they gonna use guerrilla warfare, they've got more experienced warriors, they also have, like, the will to fight compared to the US Army, which, you know, I feel like a lot of them don't, so once the battle starts, a lot of them might just not fight. So, maybe not the worst idea, I don't know. I mean, looking at the situation, the way it's presented in the video, I would say, wait, like, you know, so far, like, they're literally, like, slowly killing themselves, the US Army, so keep waiting. Like, you really don't have to attack early, but hey.
The dense woodland and their experience as hunters and warriors will give them an advantage. Yet, it is a break with their usual hit-and-run tactics, and extremely high risk.
Yeah.
But so too are the stakes. General St.Clair is oblivious to the looming threat. His handful of scouts from the allied Chickasaw tribe have failed to detect the large enemy force.
So some tribes are okay, I see.
Now, he makes a fateful decision. Expecting a vital flower convoy to arrive any day, he fears it will be hijacked by deserters from his own army.
Man, actually, like, even better, like, just starve them to death. Like, you know, if the tribes are literally following so close and knowing exactly what the US Army is doing, like, just, you know, cut their supply line or, you know, like, steal their convoy of food and stuff like that. I mean, you could literally defeat them like this, looking at how this whole thing is going. It's the middle of winter, like, you know, everything is super slow. There's no way, you know, like, there's no way they're gonna be able to find that much food, so this seems like quite a strategy. I don't know.
So he dispatches Major Hamtramck and 300 men of the 1st Regiment, his best troops, to find the convoy and escort it safely to the army.
That's smart. But
then he resumes his march. On November 3rd, believing himself to be within striking distance of his target, Kikiongi, although in reality completely lost, he gives the order to set up camp.
completely lost, huh?
He chooses a position atop a steep-sided plateau beside the Wabash River. Trusting to the strong natural defenses, he gives no order to fortify the camp. And while most of the army bivouacs in rectangular formation on the high ground, limited space means the militia companies have to camp 300 yards away.
Oh my god.
On the other side of the Wabash.
That's so dumb. Like, I know in a lot of, like, normal war stuff, like, a river is, you know, pretty good, a pretty good place to be, you know, like, it's hard to cross a river, so, like, if the enemy is coming from the river, you can stop them, and it's a good defense line in a way. But you just, like, split your troop with, like, a river in the middle, which means that it will be hard, if one side is attacked, it will be hard to, you know, to get to the other side to help. Like, what? My man has learned nothing from the previous failure of the other general, right? Like, you're not fighting a normal enemy, you're fighting, like, guerrilla warfare. Damn.
Here, just a shallow stream.
Shadow stream, okay.
If there is an attack, it will be very difficult for either camp to support the other.
Yeah.
At that moment, more than 1,000 warriors of the Northwestern Confederacy are assembling, just 2.5 miles away. They know exactly where the U.S. forces are.
Yeah.
And the next morning, at dawn, they will attack.
He deserves this failure. We can do nothing unless assisted by our great Father above. I pray that tomorrow he will cause the sun to shine out upon us, and we will take it as a token of good, and we shall conquer. Blue Jacket's speech before battle, reported by George Ash. Great Father above. I don't you know much about Native American religion, but I thought they worship, like, multiple gods or something. But you said, like, oh, Great Father above, so maybe just one. Interesting. Or maybe it depends on the tribe, I guess.
In the cold early morning darkness of November 4th, 1,200 warriors move into position. They are in a crescent formation.
Dumb.
On the left, Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi warriors. On the right, Wyandot, Mingo, and Cherokee. And in the center, Shawnee, Lenape, and Miami. Just before 7 a.m., with the sun's first light streaking through the trees, they let out a giant war cry and advance. In the U.S. camp, soldiers are making breakfast. Rumors swirl of recent sightings of Native Americans, reports which have not been passed to General St.Clair.
I mean, even if you tell him with, like, you know, his IQ, I don't think he would do anything about it. Would be like, actually, let me separate my force even more and put a third team all the way up the river up there. Why not? Let's separate them even more.
Now, militia sentries to the west are horrified to see hundreds of warriors advancing through the trees. They fire their weapons and run, pursued by a hail of musket balls. The inexperienced militia are taken completely by surprise. They fire a few shots and either run or are cut down where they stand.
Yeah.
Their camp is overrun in minutes. Survivors scrambling through the freezing water of the Wabash and up the slope to the main camp. Here, U.S. regulars and levy regiments are stood too, alerted by the sound.
Okay, so now actually, while this was already kind of a bit of a disaster, now, you know, even though he didn't fortify his position, he has the high ground. The Native Americans are coming from the bottom and from a river, so frankly, like, he could actually hold his ground, but I guess he's gonna fuck it up.
Sound of war cries and musket fire. Their 6 cannon are loaded and ready to fire. But panic-stricken militia rushing into camp block their line of fire.
Damn.
And it is difficult to target an enemy who moves in small groups,
it's not a line,
dashing from cover to cover.
Like, you cannot make it
Guns do
two
open
dudes at
fire.
best.
Their shots go high, crashing through branches overhead. While Miami, Shawnee, and Lenape warriors make a frontal attack on the camp, focusing attention, the 2 wings of the Native American Army push through the woods to encircle St.Clair's camp.
I mean, it's a simple thing like on Saco Munch, right? But, you know, at first I thought they were literally just going to charge straight. But yeah, perfect.
U.S. outposts are quickly overrun or flee back to camp. Firing from cover, Native American sharpshooters begin to pick off U.S. gun crews and officers. Within 30 minutes, a quarter of St.Clair's force are casualties or have fled into the woods. More men are falling every minute. St.Clair recognizes the
So I guess they're portrayed as basically most of them, if not all of them, using muskets. Figured, you know, like bows would still be very, very useful, no? Or was it really that they all adopted musket to that extent? Because at this point, it's probably way faster to shoot your bow than your musket.
Danger his army is in, and orders Lieutenant Colonel Dark, commanding the 1st Levy Regiment, to clear the rear of the camp. Dark takes 5 companies, about 300 men, and leads them forward in a wheeling bayonet charge to the right. He is supported by 50 mounted dragoons on the left.
The cavalry might help, yeah.
Wyandot warriors fall back before them. But it is a trap.
This trap.
They are luring the U.S. troops out of position. By the time they reach Buckrun Creek, they're cut off and surrounded.
Oh my god.
The Wyandots renew their attack, inflicting heavy losses on Dark's men as they fall back to camp. Meanwhile, Shawnee warriors attack the southern end of the camp, where the slope is less steep. They overwhelm dragoons and levy troops guarding the perimeter and break into the center of the camp.
Nice.
here they fall on wounded soldiers and civilians sheltering behind the front line. These include camp followers,
That's
servants,
nice, I guess,
cooks,
but it's war, right?
wives, a few children. Dozens are killed. St.Clair sends major...
Again, like the art that they always use for this video is just on a whole different level. Yeah. Easier to train fresh recruits with guns and bow. Inexperienced Oda troops prove very well against veteran samurai. Fair enough.
Part commanding the 2nd Regiment to clear the camp at Bayonet Point and rescue any survivors. Hart's attack is successful, but he is shot and killed, and his men suffer heavy losses.
Alright.
About half the U.S. regular officers are now dead,
Damn.
and second-in-command Major General Butler has been wounded twice.
Oof.
Some soldiers, stunned by the horrors unfolding around them, simply give up and cower behind any cover they can find.
I mean, at that point, what do you do? Yeah, like if you stay in the main camp, clearly you're going for annihilation. But at the same time, you're surrounded. So even if you try to run, I mean, can you even escape? And then even if you escape, like, you're just going to be exposed to the elements. You don't know where you're going. You're in the middle of, like, you know, America's forests, which are endless, right? It's fucked.
It is now 8:30 a.m. A short lull in the fighting follows, which St.Clair uses to pull in his perimeter and form a tighter defense. It is the quiet before the storm.
Oh,
Little Turtle and the war chiefs are rallying their men for one final attack.
I mean, again, as always, I'm like the you know, YouTube reactor, like strategist. I'm just saying that, like, you know, if this was a game or something. But at this point, they've got them completely encircled. So maybe, like, you know, like, don't try to attack their strong encircled defenses. Just, you know, you get them encircled, so just let them attack you. I don't know. But I guess there's also like that 300-man force that was sent away for the supplies that might come at some point. That would be dangerous. Exposed to crossfire, men and officers were falling in every direction. A few minutes longer, and a retreat would have been impractical. Delay was death. Lieutenant Denny at the camp of General St.Clair. This implies they managed to retreat.
2 hours have passed since the initial attack, and St.Clair sees that if they do not break out through the enemy lines now, his entire force will be wiped out. The handful of surviving officers rally the men for a do-or-die charge back down the trail by which they'd arrived. With fixed bayonets, U.S. regulars lead the way, pushing through the enemy's skirmish line. Anyone who can still walk hurries behind. But dozens of wounded are left to their fate.
Yeah.
The breakout soon turns into a mad dash as terrified survivors dump weapons and kit in their race to escape.
Understandable.
St.Clair lingers at the rear of the column to ensure as many get clear as possible.
Okay.
He is one of the last to leave the battlefield.
Guess I can respect that.
Warriors pursue the shattered U.S. Army for several miles. Then they return to the campsite to loot and finish off the wounded.
An absolute victory.
Among them, Major General Butler.
Butler.
The warriors of the Northwestern Confederacy celebrate into the night. The Battle of the Wabash, which would come to be known as St.Clair's defeat, is over.
And yet we all know, you know, again, like the tribes have only so many warriors, right? While you know, even with a big defeat like this, the US can just keep sending more and more troops. Like, you know, no matter how many battles you win, you can't win the war, right? But yeah, a great victory. You can at least say that, yeah, they never stop without fighting, you know. Did I not, in the last words I said to him, warn him against a surprise? President Washington on receiving news of St. Clair's defeat. I mean, you did. Damn. Damn. I guess you can rub that in his face, yeah? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, clearly he did not listen, he did not care. I mean, that whole thing of like separating his troop on two sides was so dumb. I don't know if, you know, it would have really helped, even if they were concentrated. Maybe it would. Maybe the ending would have been the same. But, you know, like there was still like such a big mistake. And such an obvious like...
The U.S. route doesn't stop until exhausted survivors reach Fort Jefferson that evening, a distance of 30 miles.
That's fast.
Here, the roll is taken, and their appalling losses revealed. 2/3 of the army have been either killed, wounded, or are missing.
630 killed and missing.
All 6 guns have been lost, along with the baggage train and 1,200 muskets. Native American losses are around 20 dead and 40 wounded.
Just really? That little? I thought it wasn't that one-sided. Okay, that's insane. That's insane. You know, it reminds me, like, it's in a weird reversal, like, it reminds me of when Napoleon's army went to Egypt, right? Battle of the Pyramids and Abu Qir, and those kind of battles where, you know, the modern tactics and the modern trained army was so much stronger than, like, the, you know, the Pasha's forces, that it was, yeah, like, you know, thousands of dead to only a couple dozen dead to the front, right? But yeah, what's interesting is that, yeah, like, the tribes are not a modern army. The US is supposed to be the modern army, and yet it was completely reversed. Like, this kind of scale is absolutely insane. That is bananas.
It has been an utter rout and a humiliating defeat, the largest the United States Army will ever suffer against Native Americans, and costlier than any battle of the Revolutionary War.
Really?
But it was not entirely unforeseen.
It was, maybe I guess, again, it's one of those periods that I know nothing about, the Revolutionary War, but I thought the Revolutionary War was like a massive thing. Like there's no way there wasn't battle with like thousands of casualties, right? Or am I totally wrong? And all this time I was wrong about the American War, which I thought was like, you know, like a massive thing, yeah?
General Harmar, defeated himself by Little Turtle the previous year, had expressed grave concerns about St.Clair's expedition. His views were recorded by Lieutenant Denny, unfortunate enough to have served in both expeditions.
Oh yeah.
Harmar saw with what material the bulk of the army was composed. Men collected from the streets and prisons of the cities, hurried out into the enemy's country, and the officers commanding them totally unacquainted with the business in which they were engaged. Not any one department was sufficiently prepared. Both quartermaster and contractors extremely deficient. It was a matter of astonishment to him that the commanding general, who was acknowledged to be perfectly competent, should think of hazarding, with such people and under such circumstances, his reputation and life, and the lives of so many others. Knowing, too, the enemy with whom he was going to contend, an enemy perhaps superior to an equal number of the best men that could be taken against them.
Okay. Memoirs of Denis. I mean, I guess the problem, yeah, you could say that the commander was stupid, but Washington is the one who sent him. Not only sent him, but also, you know, like sent him with dislike of supply, dislike of experienced troop, etc., right? So he can't be the only one sharing the blame.
St.Clair's defeat led to the United States' first congressional investigation. Their report cleared St.Clair of personal blame, but found a long list of failures in the preparation and execution of his campaign. The next U.S. general sent to take on the Northwestern Confederacy, General Mad Anthony Wayne, would first impose major reforms on the U.S. Army. He would
I guess it's the history of war, right? Like failure leads to innovation and evolution. That's how it goes a lot, right? That's how it goes a lot.
insist on more resources, greater professionalism, improved training and tactics, and better reconnaissance.
Yeah, that's a good thing, reconnaissance.
For the Native Americans, the Battle of the Wabash was a brilliant victory, won through courage and tactical skill. It marks out Little Turtle, Blue Jacket, and
What happened to his daughter,
Baconga
though? Did he kill his daughter in reprisal, or did he ever get his daughter back?
as among the most successful Native leaders of all time in the wars against the United States. But it also proves to be the high point of their resistance.
I figured.
Their enemy would soon escalate the Northwest Indian War, and under the leadership of General Wayne, bring it to a conclusion at the Battle of Fallen Timbers. The inexorable westward march of the United States would continue. Thank you to Osprey Publishing for kind permission to use several of their images in this video. You can find links to some great books by Osprey about America's frontier wars in the video description.
It's publishing
Thank you
artwork
also
is
to
used in an uploading
artists
video.
John
It's
Buxton,
insane.
Todd
Looks so good,
Price, and Bryant White for permission to use their work in this video. To view more of their fantastic works, follow the links in the description.
The artwork is again absolutely insane.
Thanks to the Patreon supporters who helped to
Yes, elle pourrait dire, okay. I mean, again, may not be, you know, the usual stuff they cover, and not even the same narrator, but that was one other video. I always think, like, Epic History is just pretty incredible, you know? As I said, like, I absolutely love their Napoleonic war video, and now that I've gotten deeper into it with other people's videos that go, you know, deeper into, like, the politics and stuff like that, I still think Epic History is amazing, even though they focus more on the battle themselves than the political in-between and, you know, aspect like that. But that was still great, yeah. I mean, I'd never heard of this battle, and it's presented in such a high quality way with the artwork, with the narration, with the explanations, etc. Like, it's just, as I always say, like, I feel like Epic History might be the best history channel on YouTube. And I feel like that's another video kind of showcasing that, in my opinion, yeah. Very interesting. As I always said, like, I've always been kind of interested in American history. I know bits and pieces, and, you know, I guess I should try to learn more. Like, you know, I need to find like some long YouTube series like the one I found for Napoleon that basically, you know, like don't go on just the big points but everything in detail. I don't know if there's anything like that. If you guys know anything like that, do tell me. Literally that goes, you know, year by year on, you know, all the important things that happen, the important people, etc. I guess I'll have to get into it one day to not be very clueless, you know. Okay, so great video.